In barely 2 centuries, one species learned to summon lightning, split atoms, and bind the planet with light. We called it progress. From coal to silicon, matter became motion, and motion became profit. Every invention promised freedom from the limits of nature, each one whispering the same creed: more is better. By the 19th century, we burned the past, fossilized sunlight, to build the future. By the 20th, we learned to broadcast our dreams at the speed of light. Progress became religion. Economists, its priests, markets, its temples, and the planet, its collateral. We stopped asking whether growth was good and started asking only whether it was fast. History was retold as a ladder: cave, plow, engine, rocket, cloud. Each rung salvation through invention. We forgot the ground beneath the ladder: forests, rivers, atmosphere, the quiet patience that made every rung possible. A planet of 2 billion became 8. We measured success in motion, not meaning, in consumption, not continuity. Governments rose and fell on quarterly numbers while the biosphere carried the cost. Then, in 1972, a team at MIT built the first computer model of the entire world. They called it the limits to growth. 5 variables: population, food, resources, pollution, industrial output. When they let the equations run, all 5 rose, peaked, and fell within a century. Not apocalypse, geometry. Exponential growth colliding with finite capacity. The model warned that without deliberate restraint, industrial civilization would overshoot and decline around mid-century. The message was clear: balance or breakdown. The world laughed. Politicians called it pessimism. Economists dismissed it as error. Oil flowed, markets soared, faith in progress hardened. 50 years later, the printout has come true in slow motion. Industrial output slows. Inequality widens. Ecosystems retreat. The curve has already turned. Yet we cling to the same story: that technology will save us from technology. We keep adding rungs to a ladder standing in sand. Each new breakthrough deepens the old dependence. Every efficiency breeds new demand. The creed of progress remains unbroken because it feels like hope. We mistake acceleration for direction, cleverness for wisdom, novelty for change. But the planet does not negotiate, and physics does not forgive. The myth of infinite progress was never a truth, it was an era. A brief flare of abundance mistaken for destiny. Now the equations of growth are converging again, and they end where they always do. Not in conquest, but in correction. 2040 is not the future. It is the consequence of the story we refuse to rewrite. And the story begins here, at the end of progress. The business-as-usual trajectory: collapse in real time. In 2020, sustainability analyst Gaia Harrington revisited the limits to growth. She compared half a century of real data: population, pollution, food, resources, industrial output, to the model from 1972. The lines matched. Humanity was tracking the business-as-usual path, the one that rises, plateaus, and then falls. Collapse in that model isn't an explosion. It's an unraveling. Industrial capacity falters, food declines, health deteriorates, and population slowly contracts. It is a quiet physics lesson taught in real time. By 2025, the symptoms are everywhere. Global GDP growth hovers below 3%. Advanced economies stall. Emerging ones expand only by burning what's left. Every new dollar demands more energy, more extraction, more waste. Efficiency gains vanish into scale. Industrial civilization has entered the high-effort, low-yield phase, immense work for diminishing reward. We burn harder to stay still. The treadmill hums, but the scenery no longer changes. The illusion of growth persists because our accounting rewards damage. GDP rises when we rebuild from disaster. Deforestation appears as income. Pollution, waste, and illness are counted as productivity. We confuse motion with health because stopping feels like death. Meanwhile, the planet's metabolism slows. Atmospheric CO2 climbs past 424 parts per million, the highest in 3 million years. Temperatures rise. Floods erase cities. Droughts kill harvests. Each event feeds the next, linking weather to war, scarcity to migration. Our systems designed for expansion cannot process contraction. Supply chains strain. Energy grids falter. Financial markets panic at stability, demanding perpetual motion. Technology was meant to reverse this trend. Artificial intelligence, renewables, carbon capture, each promised salvation through efficiency. But efficiency without restraint is acceleration. The 2025 MIT report found that 95% of corporate AI projects failed to yield measurable benefit. Most consumed energy and capital while deepening complexity. The tools built to save the system now feed its entropy. Civilization has become self-referential, optimizing its own machinery rather than its purpose. We innovate faster than we adapt. We perfect systems that no longer serve life. Harrington's validation of the old model is not prophecy, it's audit. The inflection point has passed. Industrial growth peaked around 2020. Welfare and food follow close behind. By 2040, decline becomes visible even to those who denied it. The signals are not subtle. Debt climbs while real output stagnates. Governments spend more to maintain the illusion of momentum. Social trust erodes. Polarization replaces purpose. The empire of growth is running on faith alone. The business-as-usual trajectory looks stable until it breaks, like a bridge at its load limit. Each additional ton feels trivial until the final one. When collapse arrives, it will not be sudden. It will be recognized only in hindsight, when continuity has already disappeared. We call it crisis, recession, transition, anything but what it is. A civilization returning to the mean of physics. What follows is not extinction but simplification. The complex systems that cannot justify their cost will shed themselves. The future will be smaller, slower, less certain. But that is what equilibrium feels like after excess. Growth has stopped. The curve is bending. The question now is not whether progress continues, but what we will become when it doesn't. The tech salvation myth. When innovation became entropy, humanity has always believed that every problem has a tool and every limit has a key. The wheel conquered distance. The engine conquered labor. The circuit conquered time. Each invention expanded our reach and narrowed our foresight. For centuries, progress meant mastering nature. Now it means mastering the machines that once served us. We built systems to amplify intelligence and discovered that they amplify consequence instead. By 2025, the planet hums with code. Generative algorithms write music, art, and strategy. Machines trade currencies faster than nations can legislate. Factories operate on self-learning routines, refining inefficiency into perfection. Yet behind the brilliance lies a paradox. The smarter our systems become, the less control we have over what they optimize. Artificial intelligence was meant to make civilization efficient. Instead, it made it hungry. Every byte processed burns watts. Every watt demands extraction. Data centers now consume as much power as entire countries. The cloud floats on rivers of diesel and lithium. The more virtual our world becomes, the heavier it gets. The MIT survey of 2025 confirmed what the system theorists feared. Billions invested in smart technology, but 95% of deployments produce no measurable value. Automation increases output without reducing cost. Algorithms replace humans, but not habits. We've built a mirror that reflects our flaws at machine speed. Each wave of innovation begins as liberation and ends as dependence. Steam freed the worker but enslaved the miner. Electricity freed the night but fed the smog. The internet connected the world but fractured the mind. Now AI promises omniscience and delivers noise. Technology is no longer a tool, it is an environment. A global nervous system that learns only what we teach it: competition, acceleration, consumption. Our inventions amplify intent, not wisdom. Efficiency used to mean doing more with less. Now it means doing everything faster, regardless of purpose. We chase optimization while the foundation crumbles beneath us. The tech salvation myth endures because it feels rational. It offers an escape from moral reckoning. If every crisis can be solved with innovation, then no one must change. It promises that physics will forgive what economics cannot. But innovation cannot replace restraint. Clean energy does not erase consumption, it expands it. Electric cars reduce emissions but triple demand for metals. Renewables rise beside fossil fuels, not instead of them. Carbon capture consumes more energy than it saves. We are building an empire of solutions that multiply the problem. This is entropy in disguise, order built on disorder, stability bought with waste. Each improvement buys time but not direction. Civilization is not running out of ideas, it's running out of context. Our machines now outpace comprehension. They predict markets, mimic empathy, fabricate truth. They create infinite supply in a finite world. And because we mistake novelty for meaning, we call this progress. But entropy is patient. When a system consumes more energy than it can replenish, collapse is not failure. It is equilibrium. The digital economy already shows the pattern, vast power drawn for vanishing returns. Information grows exponentially, understanding shrinks. Technology was supposed to make us gods. Instead, it made us mirrors. We see ourselves everywhere, scaled up, stripped of humility. Our creations inherit our blind spots and multiply them. They have no malice, only obedience. They are perfect reflections of imperfect intent. The myth persists because it comforts. It says we can solve the consequences of growth with more growth. That ingenuity is infinite and limits are optional. That salvation can be coded, but intelligence without restraint becomes entropy. Every server farm is a new furnace. Every update burns another layer of atmosphere. The world's most advanced minds are optimizing systems that accelerate their own decline. We have mistaken power for progress, computation for comprehension. What comes next will not be the triumph of technology, but its reckoning. When innovation became entropy, progress became collapse. And still we called it success. The political handbrake, inequality, conflict, and the erosion of resilience. If technology is the engine of civilization, then politics is its brake. In 2025, that brake has failed. Governments once claimed they could steer progress through reason and reform. Now they react, not lead, managing crisis after crisis, each more expensive than the last. The institutions that built the industrial age are grinding against the forces it unleashed. The result is a global system that cannot slow down even to save itself. It must expand, extract, and consume, or collapse under its own debts. The creed of growth has become a curse written into every national budget, every pension fund, every promise of tomorrow. Inequality is the fuel keeping this broken engine running. In 2025, the top 1% controls nearly half of all wealth. The bottom half owns less than 1%. This imbalance is not an accident, it is architecture. A pyramid that channels surplus upward while instability spreads below. Inequality corrodes the invisible infrastructure of society. Trust. Without trust, cooperation falters. Without cooperation, complexity becomes chaos. Every institution begins to fracture under its own contradictions. History repeats its oldest pattern. Empires in decline pour their remaining strength into defense. By 2025, global military spending exceeds $2.5 trillion, more than the combined investment in education, health, and environmental protection. Each missile built is a hospital unfunded. Each war waged is a climate target delayed. Security becomes the last ideology. Governments police unrest instead of addressing it. AI surveillance predicts dissent before it happens. Social networks filter reality until belief itself fragments. Citizens are managed like data, measured, monetized, manipulated. But control is not stability. You can censor outrage, but not despair. You can suppress protest, but not hunger. When the promise of progress evaporates, identity becomes the only remaining currency. And identity divides faster than it heals. Populism rises from the ruins of faith. Leaders promise order without justice, growth without balance, salvation without change. They weaponize nostalgia, turning memory into propaganda. Every contraction breeds a strongman. Every crisis becomes a stage for fear. Meanwhile, the global order unravels. Trade alliances fracture under protectionism. Supply chains shrink behind borders. Conflict zones expand where climate and scarcity meet. The logic of cooperation, essential for planetary stability, gives way to the logic of survival. Debt deepens the spiral. Nations borrow from the future to sustain the illusion of prosperity. But the future has nothing left to lend. Global debt now exceeds 3 times the world's GDP, collateralized by ecosystems that no longer regenerate. We are financing collapse with compound interest. As inequality widens and trust decays, governance becomes performance. Summits produce slogans, not solutions. Climate accords are signed with one hand while subsidies for oil and weapons flow with the other. Politics becomes theater staged on a melting set. The social contract, the belief that progress would lift all boats, has failed. Half the world now lives with stagnant wages and shrinking prospects. The other half cannot buy safety with wealth. Civilization has entered a zero-sum psychology, everyone competing for what remains. This is how collapse begins, not with war or famine, but with exhaustion. A quiet loss of faith that the system can change before it fails. And when faith disappears, even abundance feels like poverty. The political handbrake has locked. The vehicle of progress is sliding downhill, faster each year, still pretending to steer. But collapse is not a single event. It is the end of the illusion of control. And control is what modern politics was built to sell. The stabilized world and the final window, 2025 to 2030. Collapse is not the opposite of progress. It is progress running past its balance point. A system overshoots, then sheds what it cannot sustain. The correction feels like catastrophe only to those who built their identity on growth. When the MIT team published The Limits to Growth in 1972, they also offered a path that avoided collapse. They called it the stabilized world. In that scenario, humanity chose balance over expansion. Industrial output leveled off, population stabilized. Pollution declined. Resources were managed within the planet's capacity. The result wasn't utopia, but continuity. The model showed this transformation was technically possible if it began before 2030. After that, feedback loops would accelerate too fast to reverse. We are now deep inside that window. The stabilized world demanded 3 converging changes: technological efficiency, social equity, and ecological restoration. Each reinforced the others. Efficiency reduced waste. Equity built trust. Trust enabled cooperation. Cooperation made efficiency real. Yet in 2025, none of these loops have closed. Emissions rise. Inequality deepens. Politics fractures under debt and denial. Technology chases symptoms, not systems. Earth for All, the modern update of Limits to Growth, defines 5 extraordinary turnarounds still capable of shifting the curve: end poverty, reduce inequality, empower women, transform food systems, and transition to clean energy. Together, they could realign civilization within planetary boundaries. But each one demands redistribution of power and wealth, something no dominant system volunteers. Ending poverty would unlock potential. Empowering women would stabilize population. Reducing inequality would rebuild trust. Transforming food systems would heal land. Clean energy would decouple prosperity from combustion. The math is simple. The politics are impossible. Humanity's addiction to growth runs deeper than economics. It's emotional, a promise that tomorrow will be better simply because it must be. To stop expanding feels like failure. But continuing guarantees collapse. A civilization built on accumulation cannot imagine sufficiency as success. Yet the stabilized world measures prosperity by endurance, not excess. Its wealth is time, not profit, stability, not surplus. There are glimpses of this future scattered across the planet. Small nations decoupling well-being from GDP. Cities converting highways into gardens. Communities generating local power, local food, local trust. They are prototypes of continuity in a culture still chasing acceleration. The transition requires imagination equal to fear. We must replace the myth of progress with the art of balance. Shift from extraction to regeneration, from ownership to stewardship, from competition to continuity. It sounds moral, but it is mathematical. A system that consumes faster than it renews will always collapse. Balance is simply the physics of survival. Between 2025 and 2030 lies the hinge of history. Every delay narrows the safe landing zone. 6 of 9 planetary boundaries are already breached. The biosphere's buffer is nearly gone. The next 5 years decide whether descent becomes crash or landing. The stabilized world is still possible, but only by design. It demands deliberate slowdown, distributed power, and a new metric of success, longevity of systems, not growth of output. It asks us to grow wiser, not larger. If civilization can learn to measure enough, it might still endure. If not, physics will finish the lesson for us. Collapse by design. Collapse is not a singular event. It is a process, the sound of systems returning to scale. We did not design civilization to fail, we designed it to grow. Failure is simply growth obeying its limits. From the first spark to the last server, we followed one command: expand. Expand markets, data, cities, control. Each step forward carried the same flaw, a structure optimized for more, never for balance. The end was written into the design. The 20th century turned sunlight into steel and trust into capital. We split atoms, mapped genes, connected continents. We achieved brilliance but mistook it for wisdom. Each breakthrough solved an old problem by creating one too complex to solve again. We were not ignorant, we were addicted. To motion, to mastery, to the illusion that intelligence guaranteed survival. When progress slowed, we built machines to push it faster. When those machines faltered, we built new myths to explain the noise. Now the curves predicted in 1972 have converged in the real world. Growth has plateaued, welfare has stalled. The ecological debt has come due. The collapse of the old order is not sudden, it is simply visible at last. The age of acceleration is ending. The age of reckoning begins. But collapse by design is not destruction, it is adaptation. It means releasing what cannot last so that something smaller, slower, and wiser can emerge. It means rediscovering proportion after centuries of excess. The word collapse comes from kollabi, to fall together. It is not annihilation but convergence. When outer systems fail, inner truths return: cooperation, humility, endurance. Civilizations fall inward before they fall apart. The empire of consumption will go first, undone by its own abundance. The empire of data will follow, undone by its noise. What endures will be whatever can live on less. Communities, not corporations. Repair, not replacement. Time, not transaction. The planet will not mourn our fall, it will breathe. Forests will reclaim concrete. Rivers will cut new paths through memory. What we call collapse, life calls renewal. Every empire believed it was immortal until the soil said otherwise. We are not the first to mistake growth for destiny, only the first to do it globally. Our ruins will teach what our models could not, that power without proportion is self-erasing. But endings are architects too. When the scaffolding breaks, light enters. Through collapse, form reappears. We learn again that strength is not scale, but balance. The next civilization will not build monuments of glass, but of continuity. Its cathedrals will be forests. Its wealth will be time. Its progress will be measured in beauty preserved. This is not a call to despair, but to design. To end voluntarily what physics will end by force. To engineer descent instead of endure impact. To replace growth with grace. We are not waiting for the future. We are building it in every act of restraint, every choice to repair instead of consume. The transition will be uneven, painful, uncertain, but possible. Collapse, when chosen, becomes renewal. 2040 is not apocalypse, it is symmetry. The mirror year when consequence overtakes denial and humanity sees itself without illusion. Some will call it the end of progress. Others will recognize it as the beginning of wisdom. Because collapse by design is not the end of the world. It is the world remembering how to begin again.